Now, here's an interesting thing. What if I only want this to print odd numbers? Here's one way I can print odd numbers. Okay, now right now it's going to print every number from 1 to 100, odd or even. Does anybody remember? Does anybody remember how to print an odd number, or how to tell if a number is odd or not? There's a special operator for this that I talked to you about when we talked about operators, but we haven't used it since. It's called the modulus operator. And remember, it returns the remainder. So if I use the modulus on any number and the remainder is 1, that means it's an odd number. So if I take the x and I use the modulus and divided by 2 is equal to 0, then I'm going to say continue, else we're going to print it's odd. Now here's an interesting thing, okay? So when I run this, something weird happens. Now it is, if you notice, if you're paying attention, it is only showing the odd numbers. So that part worked. But wait a minute, it went way past 100, right? Why is it going past 100? Because continue says you're going to skip everything else in that loop after this. That basically says, like Chutes and Ladders style, go back to the start, right? So if I have, and I'm going to stop this before my computer, like, blows up or overheats or something. Let's hope it doesn't. So what this does is it says, while this is true, let's add 1 to it, and then it says if this is divisible by 2. So if it's an even number, continue. Continue says skip the rest of this code, go back to the beginning. So the reason it keeps counting is because 100 is an even number. So on the time when it was going to get to 100, it was about, so when x equals 100, it's divisible by 2. It skips back to here, and then it becomes 101, and x is never equal to 101. So if I want to stop this loop, I should say greater than or equal to 100, so that when it becomes 101, it will stop the loop. Let's run that again. And there it goes. Okay, so continue skips everything else in the loop and goes back to the top of that loop, no matter what. So you also need to be careful, because when your loops become more complex with break statements and continue statements and things like that, you could have unintended conditions that set up an infinite loop, because the condition where you end the loop has never been reached. So most of the time, your primary way of ending a loop is probably not going to be a break statement. Most of the time, you want your primary way, a main way of ending the loop to be here as sort of your source of absolute truth. Because even if you use a continue statement and you're bouncing back to this, you want this to eventually become false. Okay, so you want to think about that. Like, how can I make sure that my loops are fairly robust and don't just keep going on and on and on, even though I didn't intend for that to happen? So that is using continue to skip a part of a loop. Okay, so in this case, we've got another example here of continue, and I'll just demo this really quick. Never hurts to have too many examples. Now in this case, I'm going to have it I'll count to 7 or 6. And we'll run that. Okay. And so in this case, you'll see if x equals 2, it prints x equals 2 in this way, and then it continues so that it doesn't also print x is not 2, because in that case x was 2. So that's another simpler example of pattern matching there. So there are lots of different applications. I will say this, I use break a lot more than I use continue, typically. When I see a continue, a lot of times there are simpler ways to do things than using the continue. But it's not a bad option to just know you have it available to you.